Okay, so here are our notes on commas. Now, there are 7 different comma rules, and I have some suggestions for you. First suggestion would be just to do the first 4, take a break, and then do the second set of 3. It's up to you. If you're feeling a little more ambitious, maybe you want to do all 7, but that would not be what I would suggest. Okay, there's a lot of different stuff. Some stuff you probably know. Other things are probably going to be new to you. So let's get to it. Okay, the first thing is items in a list. Now this seems to be the most commonly used reason for using a comma. So let's see an example here. So there's 2 examples here. First one that's not crossed out says, I like candy, comma, pie, comma, and cake. Now, this comma right there, the one that's after pie, that's called the Oxford comma. That is optional according to the American grammar rules. In England, not optional. But it's up to you. All I would say about that one is either you should always do it or you should never do it. It's totally up to you, one or the other. Now, the second example right here, I hate spinach and liver, there's only 2 things in that list. So because there's only 2 things in that list, you do not need a comma. So don't just put a comma just because the word and is there. You only need it in the list if there are 3 or more items. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Moving on. With a conjunction, or as some of you know them, fanboys, between independent clauses. Now first off, you have to know what the conjunctions are. You should know that each one of those letters in the word fanboys stands for a different conjunction. So we have the word for, then and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So anytime one of those words appears in the sentence and there are 2 independent clauses on either side of them, then you need a comma. So 2 examples right here. I hate cleaning the bathroom, comma, but I do it every week. The comma and the word but are in yellow because that's our comma and our conjunction. The sentence before I hate cleaning the bathroom, that is an independent clause that could stand alone as its own sentence. The sentence after I do it every week could also stand alone as its own sentence. The person decided to put them together and make them a compound sentence, so you need a comma and the conjunction. Second example, Mike plays first base and Joe plays center field. You also would need a comma and a conjunction. The first part of the sentence could be its own sentence. It's an independent clause. The second part of the sentence would be an independent clause as well. Moving on. Dates and places. A couple things with them. Okay, first off, you need a comma after the number of the day in the year. So this example is June 1st, 2010. You need a comma after number 1. Now, in this example, I have it crossed out because this is incorrect. Many of you do this, the ST or the ND after the number 2 or the TH after various other numbers. It's not really correct when you write the date. So try to avoid doing this. Okay, do the first example. The other one is places. So if we're talking about cities and states like Newtown, Pennsylvania, you need a comma in between the city and the state. If you were doing the state and the country, or the city, the state, and the country, that would be the same thing as well. Now, a little kind of side rule after this dates and places one is that you actually need another comma if the date or the place occurs in the middle of the sentence. It has to be after. So here's what I mean by that. If your sentence continues after the year or the state, you need to put another comma. So Caroline was born on July 25th, comma, 1995. There's that second comma on a Tuesday. So you need that second comma after the year if the sentence continues on. If I just put the period where the comma would be right here, then obviously you don't need a comma because there would already be a period there. But if it happens in the middle of the sentence, that is necessary. And that goes for dates as well as places. Our final rule here, you're going to see this acronym here, which is, the way I pronounce it is AWWBIS. AAAWWUBBIS. What is AWWBIS? Who knows? Well, there are certain words that when they begin a sentence, you need to have a comma somewhere in that sentence. And this is my acronym for remembering those words, AWWBIS. And those words are as follows: as, after, although, when, while, until, before, because, if, and since. If your sentence begins with one of those words that are listed right there, those, I guess it would be 10 words, you need to have a comma somewhere in that sentence. Okay, here's what I mean. So ADVERB sentences, here's 2 examples. Since he wants to stay fit, comma, Mark exercises every day, period. Let's look at this first sentence right here. You need this comma here because this part of the sentence, since he wants to stay fit, is called a dependent clause. You cannot have that stand alone as its own sentence. You can have this part of the sentence stand alone as its own sentence. Mark exercises every day. But because I have this part, this dependent clause starting with the word since, I need to have that comma right here. Same goes for this example. After the game, I went home. Again, I went home is an independent clause. It can stand alone as its own sentence. But this part right here is called a dependent clause. Here's that one of those ADVERB words, after, and our comma goes right here. Okay, so here are some notes on ADVERB sentences. So the comma is always going to go after the introductory dependent clause, like I just mentioned. And if it's an independent clause, meaning it can stand all by itself, you need another punctuation mark, and that's going to be a semicolon, which we will do on a later lesson. So here are 2 examples of non-ADVERB sentences. So the sentence, tired, we collapsed as soon as we arrived home, starts with the word tired, which is obviously not an ADVERB word, but you do need that comma right here. So this is an introductory phrase or word that we don't really need. You could have just started with a capital W and said, we collapsed as soon as we arrived home. So that word tired is extra, so we put a comma there to offset it. The sentence down here, without giving it a second thought, comma, we helped the victims of the accident. And because, again, the beginning part of that is a dependent clause, it does not start with an ADVERB word. Without is not one of those, but we still need that comma right here. Okay, because it's extra information. We could have just started right with the word we, and the sentence would have been fine. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to write in your notebooks 4 sentences, and you need to illustrate each one of the different comma rules thus far. So that would be the items in a list. The second one would be the comma with a conjunction. The third one would be the date or the location, and the fourth one would be one with an ADVERB or a non-ADVERB sentence. So do that now, and if you want to take a break, you can do that. Pause this video and return back to it at a later time, or if you'd like to just pause it and come back right away, that would be fine too, but we're going to do the last 3 comma usage rules in a second. Alright, so here we are with the second half of the comma rules. There are 3 that I consider more advanced commas. You're not going to see these as often as the first 4, but they are still found on a daily basis. First ones are called conjunctive adverbs. Okay, an adverb is going to tell you how you're doing something. It works with a verb to show how you're doing something. So here's a list of 8 conjunctive adverbs. So words like however, consequently, nevertheless, accordingly, therefore, furthermore, hence, and moreover. Again, you don't see these words every single day, but you see them enough. Now, when they occur in a sentence, if it is at the beginning or the end of a sentence, you're going to use 1 comma. So this sentence starts with the word consequently. Consequently, comma, Miss America will relinquish her crown effective immediately. Second sentence has a conjunctive adverb at the end of the sentence. The committee will let her keep her bouquet of roses, comma, however. Okay, so when those occur at the beginning or the end of the sentence, then you're going to use only 1 comma. Now, the second part to this is what happens if it's in the middle of the sentence. Well, it's pretty easy. You just use 2 commas. So you surround that word therefore with 2 commas. The Miss America crown, comma, therefore, comma will go to the first runner-up. So because this is not necessary, you've heard me say that a lot in this presentation, not necessary, you put commas around it, and that can be removed from the sentence. So you do need those commas to kind of offset. Rule number 6 with commas is they're called coordinate or equal adjectives. Okay, now this is probably the hardest to understand, so let me try to do the best that I can here. Okay. There are 3 sentences on your screen right now. The dog had tangled, dirty fur. The dog had dirty, tangled fur. The dog had tangled and dirty fur. Okay? These 2 words here, tangled and dirty, are both adjectives describing the fur in each one of those 3 sentences. Now, because they can be switched like that, they are called equal adjectives. Okay, so because they can be switched, their coordinate, you need to have a comma here or a comma right here. This sentence, you don't need it. Okay, but because you can put that word and in there, if you could remove that and the sentence still makes sense, then you probably need a comma here or a comma right here. Here's some more examples. Let's try this one. He wore a new blue suit. He wore a blue new suit. He wore a new and blue suit. Because this one kind of sounds off to our ear, it does kind of sound weird, a blue new suit, you would most likely rather say this. You do not need a comma. Okay, because the comma does not go there because you can't necessarily switch these around. Okay, so again, you use this, doesn't sound exactly right, so you don't need a comma. So here would be those 2 sentences done correctly. The first one, you do need a comma. The second one, you do not, because you cannot switch new and blue. The next slide that you're going to see right here is something I found online about the order of adjectives. So it goes from the top to the bottom. And what it says down here, this is what we're focusing on. Coordinate adjectives, when they come from the same category, need commas. When they are what they're calling cumulative adjectives, because they build on one another, because they're from different categories, they would not need a comma. So, to go back, the new blue suit would come from 2 different categories, but tangled and dirty would both be describing specifically the fur of the dog. Okay, but new and blue would be age and color. They would come from different categories. If you'd like to write this down, it might be helpful. But if you can just do the switch method, and if it makes sense, then you need the comma. If it doesn't make sense, you do not need a comma. And finally, our last category here, it just kind of goes into one which is called non-essential material. So look at these 2 sentences. Kids who watch TV all day are lazy. And you can see the part that's italicized. And then there's Jason, who watches TV all day, is lazy. The reason that there are commas in this sentence and not in this sentence is because I need this information right here. I'm not saying all kids are lazy. I'm just saying the ones who sit around and watch TV all day are lazy. Okay? Jason is lazy no matter how you slice it. He's lazy no matter what. Okay? I'm adding this in here to give you an example of what makes him lazy. Okay, there is a difference between these 2 sentences. Okay, folks, so with those 3 new rules, could you write 3 additional sentences in your notebook? One with the coordinate adjectives, one with the coordinate adverbs, and one with the non-essential material. So you should have a total of 7 sentences where you have created each one of the comma rules that are listed. If you need to go back and listen to any of this presentation, please feel free to do so. I know it's been long. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoyed it.